ISIS, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda. Those are the folks who discriminate. We bombed a building in 2017 like we never usually do. We bombed it because they threw homosexuals off that building. Our terrorist enemies hate homosexuals more than we do. Our terrorist enemies hate homosexuals more than we do. They're the ones who discriminate. Our job in the military, our Navy creed, I'm committed to excellence and fair treatment of all. That's what we learn in boot camp. That's what we drill into ourselves each and every day while we're in boot camp. Please vote up on this bill.
Thank you.
Hold on, say what? That's Florida State Representative Jeff Holcomb, and he's talking. They're discussing this bill that they're going through, which we'll give you details of. But we'll try and connect it to why he's talking about how much he hates gay folks. In fact, not as much as our terrorist enemies, because that's a flex as an American. Well, we hate gay folks, but not so much, just like 95% of the time. Again, this is down in Florida, but that one woman in white you saw behind him, she was not buying what he was selling. I know you didn't miss it, but let's watch that part again.
Our terrorist enemies hate homosexuals more than we do. They're the ones who discriminate. Our job in the military, our Navy creed, I'm committed to excellence and fair treatment of all. That's what we learn in boot camp. That's what we drill into ourselves each and every day while we're in boot camp. Please vote up on this bill.
At the back end there, she looked like any other mother that's like, where is my belt? Because this child just said some madness. She's looking for something. It's like, we got to rein this kid in. I'm not sure her position there, but she was definitely appalled at his statement about how much they hate, or we, he decided to say, as a country, hate gay folks. His reasons why he went through all this is because they're debating this bill, SM 1382 down there in Florida. And what they want to do is they're talking about the military and how it's too woke. Pause for a second, you guys. Remember, again, this has been these lines that people like Ron DeSantis, again in Florida, and all these Republicans have been pushing so hard. Is this anti-woke, anti-woke, anti-woke? Is this what they were running on? Is this the reason why the red wave never happened? But they're still pushing it because they think this is just the way to go. Donald Trump is back at the head of the party, ready to run for president again. So they have to go back to the same old tactics that didn't work before. Fine. Let's go to the details of this. This is what the top part of this bill was talking about. It's a memorial to the Congress of the United States, urging Congress to restore the United States Department of Defense's superior warfighting principles of recruiting, assigning, training, promoting, and retaining personnel solely based on merit, and ensuring such personnel maintain and display a warrior ethos. So that's a bit of a wordy way of saying we want some murderous type folks in the military. Fine, you've got that. But the thing is, you don't have to necessarily be this murderous type in order to join. But at the same time, they don't want all this other stuff about humanity and this is a real person and that person also deserves to be respected as well. Why would we want to do that? That's a little bit too woke. Here's some of the things in that bill that they're referring to. This military dominance. They want military dominance and brutality. They said that's the reasons why there hasn't been a World War III since World War II. And then they also attributed that to our lack of diversity and our lack of recognition of other folks. Here's the first part of this bill as well. He said overemphasizing and relying on diversity and inclusion in all forms, including gender, gender identity, race, and sexual preference as a primary determinant of how military forces should be compromised is one of these problems. It went longer. Here's the next section that they said. These are the lists of things that are wrong. Making nonsensical, quote, unconscious bias training mandatory for all military and civilian personnel. That's a problem. Also instituting mandatory emergency use only COVID-19 vaccines with little regard to individual medical concerns. So they're upset about that as well. And lastly, of this part of the list, also requiring mandatory training at the United States Air Force Academy to incorporate person-centered and gender-neutral language when describing individuals. So all these things they went on to say are the reasons why they're having with more recruiting, with retention, and also with finding some people with warrior-like ethos that can murder on a moment's notice. Someone drops a rock, time to shoot. We don't have that anymore because apparently we're including too many other folks in that warrior ethos. So these complaints are coming from there and they're looking to then have this. So Holcomb, in his point from the beginning, he was saying, now the military is getting seen as a bunch of bigots because we have an issue, at least we as a Republican Party, have an issue with recognizing certain people. We're not as bad as our terrorist enemies. There's more. What are your thoughts here first, Jeff?
Well, the bar is set incredibly low, but I do want to read this. Only 9% of young people now show a propensity to serve, according to Defense Department polling data shared with ABC News. It's the lowest number seen in 15 years. Top reasons cited for not wanting to join are the possibility of injury or death and fear of developing PTSD or other psychological problems. They should probably do something about that. They should probably address those things. Like maybe, I don't know, provide universal health care. So like when people return home from fighting, they don't have to fight for their basic needs. Maybe not. Can I tell a quick story, by the way? Can I give you some of that? All right, here we go. I was a little boy at the beginning of Operation Desert Storm, and I was raised in a single-parent household, and we would watch coverage on it of it on TV with my mom. And she turned to me on multiple occasions and said, "Boy, think about going into somebody's military. I will shoot your foot off."
Make sure that happens.
Did I freeze?
For a second, we got you. You said your mom's was like, "You're not joining anybody's military. It's gonna be some problems."
Yeah, she said she was going to shoot my foot off if I thought about going into somebody's military, because she knew what she didn't articulate very well, which was, I'm going to go fight in someone's war overseas, come back and be called an N-word and be devalued. So that's also an issue here.
Absolutely. And this, again, another part about this is I'm glad you read some of those reasons why, because I was going to speculate on some that I've heard, but that's things that are documented and said directly. With this younger generation of folks that they're still looking to recruit, yes, there's always folks that need it for, say, like college funds or getting off, getting out of whatever kind of economic downturn that they're in. Maybe their family isn't that financially stable. All this stuff that it will attract certain folks to the military. And those things are sometimes drying up because people are thinking, yo, I'm not going to die for this. Again, as your mother was probably telling you back in the day. So these are the things they have to shore up. It's not Alexander Hamilton days no more where he's like, this is my will in life, and if I die on the battlefield, my family will have glory. Yo, nobody's thinking like that anymore. So we have to try and twist it and change it up. And apparently this is what they're giving as the excuse why. It's part of these culture wars. But did you hear, again off the top, Jeff Holcomb down in Florida was talking about terrorists hate gay folks more than we do. It's weird. Maybe he thinks that because they will not acknowledge our own homegrown terrorists that are still doing things like this in Ohio. I think even last weekend. How about these terrorists that hate gay people?
Is there something to go make on the side of the road and like Coshocton? Anyway, let's continue. So
what they should be doing is protesting and authorizing against each other.
Just do it for me right now. Anyway, I've got tape on so I can do me a favor.
We've got our own homegrown terrorist problem there. But one more part about this lifting the veil over how much they're willing to admit that they actually legislate based off of hatred for gay folks, minorities, women, anything else that they'd like to keep in their place. Matt Walsh tweeted this out because someone asked him, do you think Jesus would treat the trans movement with the same amount of hate? Hate was the question asked that you do. And Matt Walsh replied, the answer to that question is yes. So he thinks Jesus hates people the same way that he hates people. He also thinks that being a good Christian is hating people and trying to legislate them out of existence. What would Jesus do? And if you guys aren't old enough to remember those old wrist bands that said so, these guys apparently never believed it in the first place, because what they would do is they would hate and they would legislate that hate. There's no more shifting blame or changing what your real reasons are. It's not about God. It's about your hate.